Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be reacting to a video called Where Did the Dutch Really Come From? A Genetic Mystery. Well, I'm assuming they came from Europe, from the Netherlands. Obviously I know this is deeper than that, but I don't know, so I can't wait to find out the answer. So let's check it out and comment, like and subscribe.
Through a country that's basically underwater. What if their story begins not in their famous lowlands, but in the violent collapse of the Roman Empire? And what if the same people who invented wooden shoes were also among the first Europeans to set foot on the shores of Australia and New Zealand?
Oh, really?
The truth about the Dutch people is far stranger, far more brutal, and far more globally interconnected than any textbook ever told you. And by the end of this video, everything you thought you knew will be completely shattered.
Oh my god, okay.
Let's dig in. From the ancient tribal warriors who carved out territories in a flooded wasteland, to the merchant explorers who conquered half the known world, to the genetic codes that connect them to migrations older than recorded history itself. We're about to uncover the real story of the Dutch people. This isn't about windmills and tulips. This is about survival, conquest, and the ancient bloodlines that created one of the most influential cultures in human history.
It is.
The origins of the Dutch, they're hiding in plain sight, waiting to reveal a story that spans from the frozen forests of Germania to the tropical islands of the Pacific. These tall, bike-riding, dairy-loving people, where did they actually come from?
Dairy-loving people.
Before we can understand their origins, we need to understand their home, the Netherlands. The name literally means lowlands, and that's not marketing. One-third of the entire country sits below sea level.
It's flooded.
Think about that for a second. Without constant intervention, without an endless network of dikes, dams, and pumping stations, a massive chunk of the Netherlands would simply cease to exist, swallowed by the North Sea.
It's incredible.
This isn't a fun geographical quirk.
Oh.
This is an existential threat that has shaped Dutch culture for over 1,000 years.
It's survival.
Living in a place where the ocean wants to reclaim your home every single day.
It's harsh.
That creates a specific type of person. Methodical, engineering-minded, obsessed with precision and control.
Productivity
The Dutch didn't just adapt to water, they conquered it. They turned their greatest weakness into their greatest strength.
I love that.
The same hydraulic engineering that keeps their country dry. That technology made them naval superpowers, but here's what's fascinating. This relationship with water isn't new, it's ancient.
Yeah,
the earliest peoples who settled in this region thousands of years ago were already building turpin, artificial dwelling mounds, to stay above floodwaters.
I guess they had
to. Which raises the question, who were these early settlers who looked at a flooded marsh and thought, yeah, this is home?
Yeah, we're solid.
The answer takes us back over
It's crazy because I think it must have been wilder than it is. Obviously, this is very civilized. But back in those days, you see a flooded marshland and you think, this is it. This is where we're going to settle. It's kind of crazy.
1,000 years, long before the Netherlands existed as a concept, before the nation state, before the flags and borders, there were tribes, Germanic tribes.
Oh, that's a sword.
Since before the Romans even knew Gaul existed, peoples collectively called Germani in Latin were already reshaping the ethnic and linguistic landscape of Northern Europe. These weren't unified people.
Central, I think.
They were dozens of distinct tribes with their own customs, dialects, and territories. But they shared something crucial: language roots, cultural practices, and a fierce resistance to Roman expansion. The ancestors of the modern Dutch, they were predominantly Frankish tribes along with Saxons, Frisians, and Batavians. These groups occupied the Rhine River Delta region, the exact location of the modern Netherlands, for centuries. When Rome tried to expand northward, they hit a wall. These Germanic tribes didn't play by Roman rules. The Battle of the Teutoburg Forest in 9 AD saw Germanic warriors obliterate 3 entire Roman legions. It was one of Rome's worst military disasters. The Romans learned their lesson. They established the Rhine River as their northern frontier and basically said, we're good here, you keep your swamps. But here's where history gets very interesting. Fast forward to the 4th and 5th centuries, the Western Roman Empire is collapsing. And those same Germanic tribes, they don't just defend their territory, they sweep across the entire crumbling empire.
Oh, is that
They establish kingdoms in Italy, Gaul, Britain, Iberia, even North Africa. The Franks, ancestors of the Dutch, created one of the most powerful kingdoms in post-Roman Europe.
Well, it was
Under Charlemagne, the Frankish Empire dominated the continent. This is the blood that runs through Dutch veins, not passive farmers, warriors, empire builders. Now, if you want proof of these ancient connections, just listen. Dutch is a Germanic language. Specifically, it's the 3rd most widely spoken Germanic language after English and German.
And when
you hear it, you can literally hear the family resemblance. Let me give you some examples. Water in English, Wasser in German. Water in Dutch, school in English, Schlaar in German, school in Dutch,
Yeah, they're
garden in
similar.
English, garden in German, Turin in Dutch. That last one's different, but you get
Yeah.
the pattern.
Yeah.
These aren't coincidences, they're linguistic fossils.
Yeah, they
Each
come
word
from
is
the same
evidence of a
place.
shared ancestor language, Proto-Germanic, spoken thousands of years ago by those ancient tribes we just talked about.
Unintelligible.
But here's where it gets even more interesting. The Netherlands isn't the only place Dutch is spoken. In Belgium, they speak Flemish, which is essentially a dialect of Dutch.
Oh, it's a
In
dialect.
South Africa, they speak Afrikaans, which evolved from the Dutch brought by colonizers in the 1600s.
Oh, that's what it is.
This language spread tells a story not just of ancient tribal origins, but of a people who didn't stay home, who took to
Yeah.
the seas and brought their language, their culture, their DNA to every corner of the globe.
They
Which
were
brings us to the
conquerors.
part of Dutch history nobody talks about. When people think of colonial empires, they think Britain, Spain, France. They forget the Dutch. But here's the reality. At its height, the Dutch Empire was one of the most powerful
Oh.
on earth.
It's a lot.
The Dutch East
a
India
lot of
Company
places.
was the most valuable corporation in human history, worth over $7 trillion in today's money.
How much is that?
Dutch
I don't even
controlled
know.
Indonesia for over 300 years. They colonized parts of Brazil, the Caribbean, India, Sri
Yeah.
Lanka, Taiwan, and South Africa.
That's
They
a lot of
established
places.
New Amsterdam, which
Where's
you know
that?
today
Oh,
as New
New
York
York.
City. And here's the fact that surprises a lot of people. The Dutch were the first Europeans to reach Australia and New Zealand, not the British. The
That's
Dutch
crazy to
Abel
me.
Tasman, a Dutch explorer, mapped
Tasmania.
substantial portions of Australia's coast in 1642. He was the first European to reach Tasmania and New Zealand. The British didn't
Oh my.
arrive until over a century later, but they got the credit in most history books.
I wonder why they didn't stay there. Maybe it was way too. I don't know. Maybe it was way too. I don't know. Dry. I don't know.
Why don't we talk about this?
It's way too far
Because
away.
colonial history is uncomfortable. This is part of Dutch origins too, not the proud part, but the real part. These weren't just innocent merchants. They were empire builders who used naval technology, financial innovation, and military force to control global trade routes.
Yeah, of course.
The wealth that flowed back to the Netherlands during the Golden Age, it was built on colonization, slavery, and exploitation.
That's bad.
Understanding Dutch origins means confronting this duality, engineering
Yeah.
genius and brutal conquest, tolerance at home and oppression abroad.
It's not black and
But
white.
what if we could look even deeper than historical records? Enter modern genetics. And this is where the story gets really specific. Scientists have now mapped the Dutch genetic landscape with precision that would have been impossible just a decade ago.
Love that.
A landmark study analysed the Y chromosomes of 2,085 Dutch men across the entire country, and the results reveal something fascinating. The Netherlands has significant genetic geographic substructure despite its small size. Here's what the DNA
really?
actually shows. The Dutch Y chromosome is dominated by two major haplogroups, I and R haplogroup. It accounts for 28% of Dutchmen, while haplogroup R reaches 62%.
Oh, that's more.
But within
yeah.
these broad categories lies a treasure trove of detail. The most common subgroups are R1, BL, 48, 15% of Dutchmen, R1, BM, 405, 14%, and R1, BS, 116, 9%. These aren't just random letters and numbers, they're genetic signatures that trace paternal lineages back thousands of years.
To a certain place.
What's remarkable is that these haplogroups show clear geographic patterns across the Netherlands. Clients run north-south, others east-west, creating a complex genetic map that reflects centuries of local settlement patterns. But here's where it gets even more interesting and reveals a hidden story about Dutch society. When scientists looked at mitochondrial DNA passed down through mothers, they found something completely different.
Oh, it's
The
different.
mtDNA shows virtually no geographic substructure across the Netherlands.
What does that
This
mean?
stark contrast between paternal and maternal lineages tells us something profound. Dutch society was predominantly patrilocal for over 1,500 years.
Oh,
Men
that's
stayed
a
in
lot
their
of
local
years.
communities, generation after generation, while women moved between communities. This created stable local male lineages that persisted for centuries, reinforced by
why.
limited male mobility. Ancient DNA studies confirm this continuity. Analysis of medieval Dutch populations shows remarkable stability over 1,500 years.
That's crazy.
The paternal lineages remained largely continuous from the early Middle Ages to the present day.
That's insane.
While other parts of Europe experienced massive population upheavals after Rome's fall,
Yeah.
the Low Countries maintained genetic continuity. So what does this mean for Dutch origins? It means that when you meet a Dutch man, there's a real chance his Y chromosome connects him directly to ancestors who lived in the same region over 1,000 years ago. The genetic evidence supports the historical record. These were Germanic tribes who settled, stayed, and built communities that lasted. The Yamnaya steppe herders' genetic signature is there too, but now we can see it with precision.
Oh, those
The
are
R1b
people?
haplogroups that dominate the Dutch gene pool likely originated with those Bronze Age steppe migrations around 5,000 years ago. When those nomadic herders swept into Europe with their horses and wagons, they left a permanent mark on what would become the Netherlands.
That's scary.
Your average Dutch person today doesn't just carry echoes of this ancient migration. They carry specific identifiable genetic markers that scientists can trace directly back to the
that's
Pontic
so-
Caspian steppe.
That's kind of crazy. I
And
love
here's
it.
what makes this revolutionary. Genetic studies are revealing that the traditional view of Dutch settlement patterns might be wrong. While conventional wisdom says the Netherlands was settled from south to north, some genetic analyses
Okay.
show the exact opposite pattern, suggesting
they came from
settlement
the
from the
north.
north downward. The intersection of genetics,
Oh.
archaeology, and historical linguistics isn't just confirming what we thought we knew, it's actively rewriting the story.
Yeah, where did
Speaking
they
of
come from?
unexpected connections across vast distances, here is another piece of surprising information. If someone asked you what Malaysia, Indonesia, the Philippines, Hawaii, New Zealand, and Madagascar have in common, you'd probably be
idea.
puzzled.
Yeah.
These places are spread across 3 continents and over
It's odd.
11,000 kilometers of ocean. Here's the answer. They're all connected through the Austronesian peoples who share a common ancestral homeland, the
Oh,
island of
wow.
Taiwan. Around 5,000 years ago, people from Taiwan began one of the most remarkable maritime expansions in human history. They developed outrigger canoes and navigational techniques that allowed them to settle the Pacific and Indian Oceans.
That's
Today,
insane.
from Easter Island to Madagascar, you can trace this expansion through genetics, language, and culture. Why am I telling you this?
They went
Because
so
it
far
demonstrates
away.
how deeply interconnected human origins are, how
Yeah,
peoples
sure.
can spread across unimaginable distances and still maintain cultural and genetic connections, how
Till this
indigenous
day.
populations have survived, maintained their identities, and preserved their stories. The Dutch story isn't unique. The Dutch just happen to have a particularly dramatic version. So here's where we land. What are the true origins of the Dutch people? They're the descendants of Germanic tribes who settled a harsh, waterlogged frontier and turned it into home. They're the inheritors of Frankish warriors who helped topple Rome and build medieval kingdoms. They carry genetic echoes of steppe nomads from 5,000 years ago. They're the product of a unique environment that demanded innovation or extinction. They became engineers, merchants, and naval powers because their survival depended on it.
Correct.
They built a global empire that rivaled Britain's, discovered lands that others got credit for, and created economic systems that still shape global trade today. All of this is true simultaneously. The Dutch aren't just tall people on bikes. They're not just wooden shoes and windmills. They're a complex amalgamation of ancient migrations, environmental adaptation, cultural evolution, and historical choices,
There's more to
both
them.
brilliant and brutal. Understanding their origins means holding all of these truths at once. And here's the thing that should really stick with you. Every single culture on Earth has a story this complex, layers upon layers of migration, conquest, adaptation, and change. The Dutch story just happens to be well documented and relatively recent, but whether we're talking about Austronesian peoples who crossed impossible oceans, or Germanic tribes who reshaped Europe, the pattern is the same. Human origins are never simple, they're never pure.
It
They're
never
always a
is.
tangled web of movement, mixing, and transformation.
It's a lot of
The people who tell you otherwise, who claim simple, clean origin stories, are either lying or ignorant. The truth is messy, the truth is complicated, and the truth is so much more interesting than the myths.
Correct.
So what surprised you most about the true origins of the Dutch people? Was it their ancient Germanic warrior ancestors? The fact that they discovered Australia first? The genetic connections to steppe nomads from 5,000 years ago? Or maybe the sheer scope of their forgotten empire? Drop your thoughts in the
What's
comments
the
below.
Dutch Ford?
I want to know what hit you hardest. And if you're hungry for more origin stories that shatter what you thought you knew, hit that subscribe button. We're just getting started because history isn't what they taught you in school, it's stranger.
It's true. Its history belongs to those that live to tell the tale. Yeah, sure, but it's more complicated. I think than what they teach you at school. But I think what's good is that I think technology is constantly advancing. I think especially I think when it comes to genetic testing, and I think it's really important. That's key to actually figure out the origin of a lot of people and just a lot of countries and territories. So I like that. Obviously, that's going to evolve. That's going to keep evolving. Has evolved, and each year you're probably going to be able to find out newer things, and it's going to, I think, make a clearer picture about where countries actually came from, how they originated, and where the people that actually live in that place, or in this case in the Netherlands, came from. But I love it. I think it's just a mix, and I think maybe, again, this isn't the particular case of the Netherlands, but I think for other countries, I think, and other territories can say this. I don't think one particular group of people, I don't think they just came from one particular place. I would assume, especially because I think there's a lot of mixing going on, especially I think in Europe, of all places, but probably, yeah, I would guess that's true for a lot of countries and then other continents in the world. But I would assume specifically, I think when it comes to Europe, there was just a lot of mixing. And I think you would probably think, I always say those were distinct tribes, distinct people, and you can trace it back. I think that's something very lovely, as in the language, for instance, you can trace it back to, this particular group of people, the language that they speak these days came from this particular tribe or this particular group of people. And of course, that's really, I think, the clear influence. But when it comes to actually sort of genetic components and stuff, I like what they said is just a mix of a lot of things. Well, it's in this case, I think it's a mix of around, I think, three different groups of people. But again, I think when it comes to, you can probably say the same about, I don't know, Germany or what's closer to is France, Spain, Portugal. I think there's just a lot of, there was a lot of, there are two groups of people, there were three particular groups of people that came together and settled this particular place, and then of course they were just mixing together, and that's how you get the modern sort of, I don't know, Spanish man, for instance. But I like it. It's really, I think it speaks a lot to, I know, because I think sometimes you tend to think about sort of old antique things, not even old, because I think older could be from the 1700s or 1800s. But when it comes to this particular sort of things about genetic testing and genetic sort of ancient tribes, we're speaking about really old history, as in, yeah, it's the year 500, 300. It's just incredibly old because those were the founding populations. And I think sometimes, I don't know if that's the case for everyone, but I think it's really easy, I think, to forget how interconnected these people were. I think because it's so, you think about this, it's so antique, and it wasn't even the year 1000, it was older than that. And maybe you think those people were maybe, I don't know if smart is the word, because but I would assume people are smarter, just have been probably smarter throughout history. But probably it's not about smartness, or maybe it is a little bit related to that, to intelligence, because then you think, they are less technologically advanced, because again, it was 1,000 and 1,500 years ago, 1,000 years ago. It was just a really long time ago. So you're thinking they didn't have the technology to move around, or they didn't have the technology to even just, and I'm not even going into the whole, we're conquering other places, we're going out in the ocean. No. It's just all the same sort of moving in between the same sort of territory, in this case, what will become Europe, or technically Europe has always been Europe, but it's just, again, the different territories and countries. But I think, and again, maybe it's just a thing about, it's so antique, they didn't really travel that far. No, they absolutely did. I think even throughout history, and I think the patterns of human migration tell you that I think humans have always been, I think if anything, I think these days people are a little bit less sort of, people want to go out into the world a little bit less, because people are just settled into one country, or you move cities, or sometimes you move countries, but it's not, I think it's less widespread. But in that particular time period, and back in the ancient times, people were just constantly moving around, and it was just about moving, and people, they didn't really settle, I think, because they were nomads and stuff. But again, it's just how you can sort of trace it back, and you can see the creation of a civilization that ultimately would become a country or a territory, and then it will become the people that live in here in this day and age. And I like it because you can also trace it back, and you can see this types of videos really do illustrate that, and you can see sort of the patterns of migration. But it's really funny, I think, how humans have been wanting to go somewhere else from, I don't know, since the minute they were well, we as humans were probably, smart enough, capable enough to actually move around. People would just wanted to go and see what's out there. I think people are just probably by nature, probably a little bit less in this day and age, but people just were explorers. Everyone wanted to go and see if something's better. There's something out there, probably there's something better. Maybe you can liken this to, I think, to put it in modern times, probably when it comes to everyone wants to go to space, we want to go to space, maybe not conquering other planets, because I think that's a little bit too, I don't know, fantastical and sci-fi, but people, I think, again, humans these days probably, we already conquered Earth. We just want to, now it's time to go outside and see what's out there, as in the universe, as in, other planets, other galaxies and stuff. So I think that sort of desire to always sort of go beyond and see what's beyond, my own, my viewpoint, or what's beyond what I can ride on my horse. I think that always has been here, here as in our collective sort of consciousness. And this kind of things really do illustrate that. Yes, absolutely. I think what's wild to me about this whole thing, it's not that and I just mentioned it because I think I know that I don't want to sound mean. It's, they were less smart or they were less capable, but I think it's not bad to say probably they had less technology. It's not crazy to say, even in the 1600s, 1700s, there was just more technology. We built better ships, we built better, just better carriages. I don't know how people were moving around back then, as in when it came to land. But I think the whole, for instance, the Polynesian man and the Polynesian, I think it was Polynesian, there was Taiwan, I think, the guys that came from the Pacific, I think it's crazy in their particular case that they actually, their influence, and it's lovely as well that, someone came 1,000 years ago, even more. Those people decided to, again, go outside, see what's out there, and they decided to explore. They just went around the whole planet. It's insane. They came, again, from the Pacific, and then they ended up, well, technically, obviously, the Hawaii is also the Pacific, but again, it's just sort of, you're going the other way, which, again, they went through Africa. They just went because apparently there's a link with Madagascar. They just travel a lot. I would love to know how many years it took them, because I think that doesn't happen overnight. And of course, the fact that there's still sort of that genetic imprint that relates both, from, it was Malaysia, and probably Australia, probably Aboriginal Australians, and up to Hawaii, native Hawaiians, and people from Madagascar. Obviously, that doesn't happen overnight, or it happens just because one guy decided to stay there. No, that happens throughout the course of hundreds of years, and that's how you can trace it back. But I love that you can sort of trace it back to that particular people that came from that particular island 1,000 kilometers away. It's just very nice. It just speaks to how related everything is, and how we're more, there's more similarities between humans that you probably would assume, and probably in culture as well. I would love to know the cultural sort of imprints that they probably share, because I don't think it's genetic, probably it's also cultural. I would love to know in that case, because what they did was a huge feat. I hadn't realized how far they came. And it was all by ship, which I think is crazy. And again, 1,000 years ago, it's how on earth did they did that. I think that's a marvel, and I think you really do have to give them props, because it couldn't have been easy, and still, again, it's kind of crazy that they managed to do this 1,000 years ago. And of course, with the Dutch, I think it's the same. For a nation that's so small, because yes, they are small. It's not a big territory, and with the whole thing about we're getting sort of trampled by the ocean. We're going to be swimming basically, and this country is going to disappear unless we do something. And I think that's always been the case for them. They've always known, it's always the fight against the ocean and against water. I think for a nation that small with so many probably difficulties, I think the fact that they managed to expand that far away, it's also kind of crazy. But probably I think makes sense, yes, because they started seeing, and I think that's also a really good sort of, maybe we can learn something from them. It's the fact that, the ocean, and in this case the water, it wasn't the enemy. They realized we can sort of, the enemy sometimes, yes, but we have to work sort of with it and not against it. And instead of, trying to force things or try to do anything, they were probably, if the water comes, well, we're going to build more ships, and then we're going to go outside, and then we're going to go explore the world, because again, the water can be our ally as well. And in this case, again, it's crazy that they built this huge company that apparently is the biggest company, even adjusting for inflation. That's insane. And I knew that they went, I think sometimes it's a little bit forgotten, which I think it's really, I don't know, maybe it's because they didn't really left probably that much of a cultural sort of imprint, maybe I don't know, maybe I'm speaking out of turn, and I don't really know the history, but I think people tend to forget, yeah, the Dutch were also huge. They were also huge colonizers. They also went a lot of places. I think probably most people are aware of the connection with Africa, and that's it. But no, they actually went around the whole globe as well, similar to the British, obviously the British Empire is probably the most famous, and then obviously, of course, you have Spain, and you have Portugal, and France as well, to a lesser extent. But I think, no, the Dutch, just as well, they did a lot. And it's just, they went to the Pacific. Apparently, they also went to Australia and also the Caribbean. There's even till this day, yeah, I think there's still a bunch of islands that I don't know what the actual sort of term for, I don't know if they're still territories, Dutch territories, but they're still sort of under the command. They obviously have their own yeah, they do, right? They have their own political sort of system and stuff. Then prime ministers, I would guess. But still, they are sort of under the rule of the Dutch Empire and under the Dutch crown. So it's kind of, people I think tend to forget about the Lesser Antilles. And yeah, in the Caribbean, there's still places that are technically Dutch. So I think, yeah, it's, again, people, I don't know why they forget. Maybe, again, it's a cultural thing, or I don't know, maybe others are just, they kind of pale in comparison. But no, we can't forget that they were also very, very big, and till this day, they're still quite big. Not in territory, but I think in influence. But that was it for today, and I'll see you next time. Bye!